let's play g4, whatever. I hope he goes bishop g6. This is hope chess. Yes, bro. Hope chess is the best chess. You play bullshit moves and you can get away with it because your opponent's also bad at the game. This sort of mentality and moves are the #1 reason that you're not improving in chess. Hope chess is when you play an objectively bad or refutable move, either hoping that your opponent makes a mistake or simply not analyzing the move. Playing hope chess is equivalent to sending a risky political message to a girl on Hinge. It might work, but there's a high probability you're gonna get blocked. Hope chess is the most common mistake made by players below 1800 ELO, and today I'm going to show you how to fix it, once and for all. Our first example of hope chess here is going to be where you purposefully, knowingly play a bad move in hopes that your opponent makes a mistake. Now, in this position, it's very clear that if you play something like knight takes e4, the position is just about equal. You have symmetrical pawn structures, you have equal material. This is going to be a draw. And this is the best move in this position. However, there's also the idea that you can play something along the lines of knight b5. And what knight b5 does is, if your opponent was to take this knight, you would have rook a8 check, rook b8, bishop c8, whatever. You win by checkmate. However, your opponent does not have to take this knight on b5. In fact, after knight b5, your opponent has a simple bishop h3, and now you're in trouble because let's just say you go to knight d6 to try and win this e4 pawn now. Your opponent will have rook b1 check and will actually checkmate, and so you're just straight up lost. So after bishop h3, let's say you drop to rook a1 just to avoid any back rank checkmates, and after g5, you're cooked, right? You cannot keep this knight here. Let's just say you do, and play something like rook c1 or whatever. Your opponent can take this knight now, and rook c8 does not deliver checkmate because of king g7. So let's just say you go to d6 to try and win this e4 pawn. Now that you've stopped your opponent from infiltrating your back rank, this looks like a good idea. However, now that you've wasted a move going to knight b5, you're simply too slow. e4 gets protected by f5, f5 is protected by the bishop. You're out of moves. Your opponent gets to keep the extra pawn, and you're just completely lost. Moving on to our second example, this is a position where black plays hope chess unknowingly. Black plays knight b4 here in hopes of going knight c2 and giving the opponent a fork. Unfortunately, black fails to realize that white has the simple queen a4 check, winning the knight. Knight c6 is not possible because of d takes c6, and, well, black loses the knight. Even if white fails to see queen a4, knight a3 also stops knight c2, and white just has better development in this position. Now, in this example, black did not play knight b4 knowing that it is going to be a bad move. Black played knight b4 and did not calculate the idea of queen a4 check, which is the most common type of hope chess. It is when you simply do not calculate or miscalculate your opponent's responses to a move that you played. Typically, these moves are impulsive and played very quickly, which usually leads to a blunder. Finally, let's take a look at a more practical example. In this position, the most obvious move seems to be e4. You're developing in the center, and you're kicking this knight out. However, the problem is, if you do not calculate that your opponent has knight b4, which then attacks c2, you're going to be in trouble. The only thing you can do in this position now is to play either king e2 or king d1 to stop knight c2 from being a check, or play rook c1. Rook c1 blunders the pawn on a2, forcing your rook to make another move, wasting a tempo, after which your opponent just plays something like rook fd8, and your opponent's completely better in this position. The other alternatives are not much better. King d1 or king e2 means that you're never going to be able to castle, and your king is misplaced. You simply wasted a move, and now your opponent has better development and a better position. In this position, if you recognize that e4 leads to something like knight b4, simply playing a move like a3 or rook c1 will prevent black's ideas and then will help you play e4 in the future. Now that we've looked at all of our examples, let's actually figure out how we can stop losing to hope chess. So, how do we stop playing bad moves out of impulse? The first thing you need to do before playing any move is to check to see what your opponent might respond with. This is extremely important. Take this position for example. We immediately notice the seemingly lucrative opportunity of d4. Yes, a fork. However, if we play this move on autopilot without considering what our opponent might respond with, we're going to lose the game. Knight g4 check, and how the turntables, you're the one getting forked. So before you commit to a move like d4, take a little bit of time to see what your opponent can do. Once you spot that knight g4 check is a fork, you realize that you must play something else. So, you play queen g5 check. Black goes king f8. Now you can play d4, right? Wrong. Your opponent can just go knight d3, which is a check, and now black's rook will be the one taking your queen. When I say to take a second to consider your opponent's response, you have to do this with every move besides opening theory and checkmates. By simply taking a second to pause and consider your opponent's moves, you've now managed to save this completely winning game not once, but twice. Nice. Now how do we actually spot a move like knight g4 check or knight e3? You can consider your opponent's moves, but you might miss the best one. The way we ensure that this doesn't happen is by approaching our opponent's moves the same way we approach our own. We've all heard VadimChess talk about checks, captures, and attacks when trying to find a good move, but the same can be applied to our opponent's moves. Before you commit to a move like d4, look at your opponent's checks, captures, and attacks, as these are the most forcing moves in the position, and they are also the easiest to calculate. You'll notice that both knight g4 check and knight d3 check are checks and attacks, and if you follow this thinking process, you'll find both of these moves easily. More advanced ideas like sacrifices or prophylactic moves are the next set of moves to consider, but these are difficult to find unless you understand your opponent's plans. And understanding and keeping track of your opponent's plans is a topic that I'll be covering in the next video. But for impulsive hope chess moves, simply checking the obvious checks, captures, and attacks will save 95% of your games. Of course, there's nuance to everything. Maybe you have hemorrhoids and while you're playing bliss chess on the toilet, you're experiencing excruciating pain and can't really focus. Remember that even the top grandmasters make blunders and you're not stupid for losing a board game. And so, to summarize this video, if you'd like to stop playing hope chess, the first thing you have to do is, before you play any move, is to think about what your opponent might do. And the order of moves that you're going to be thinking in is going to be checks, captures, and attacks. After that, you can think about sacrifices, and finally, prophylactic or retreating moves. And lastly, don't get caught up in your own imperfections, be it chess or anything else. It's part of the human experience to make mistakes, and you'll never be able to fully eradicate hope chess or blunders from your games, because even the best grandmasters in the world aren't able to do so. But with enough practice, you'll be able to reduce the amount of bad moves to a minimum. Alright nerds, I just got done editing the video and I'm even closer to the camera now than I was before. If you guys aren't aware, making these videos takes a extremely long amount of time. Like editing them takes like unsurmountable amount of time. I don't know if that's the right word. So basically, if you guys enjoyed the video or found it useful, I'd really appreciate if you guys could like, subscribe, or leave a comment depending on what you want to see next. That would help me out a lot. Now, on top of that, I also stream on Twitch. The link is in the description. So if you'd like to watch me play a game or chat or whatever, play a game with me, go check it out. And I also have a free chess website. Well, you can use it for free, or you can pay me if you want, but you don't have to. Everything is available for free, which allows you to study fully annotated Grandmaster games. So go check that out as well. As always, thank you all so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'm going to see you all in the next one. Goodbye.